Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to start today's presentation with you. Today, we'll explore a photographic reflection. This is our cover slide, and it sets the tone for what's to come. We'll be diving into the power of photography and how it can serve as a reflection of ourselves and the world around us. So, stay tuned as we uncover some inspiring ideas together. Let's get started. Now, let's move on to slide 2, which focuses on stanza 2, the past. Here, we start by exploring the description of the photograph. It's important to understand what the image conveys and how it connects to the poet's memories. Next, we'll look at the theme and central idea that this stanza presents. This helps us grasp the deeper meaning behind the visual and poetic elements. We'll then reflect on the photograph itself, considering what it reveals about the poet's past and emotional state. Following that, we'll discuss the first stanza, which sets the scene and introduces the memory. And finally, we'll look at the second stanza, which deepens our understanding of the poet's reflection on the past. All of these points come together to reinforce the overall theme of memory, nostalgia, and understanding one's history. Shirley Towson was born on the 20th of May, 1924, in Henley-on-Thames, England. She was the daughter of Douglas Horsfall Dixon and Marjorie Brown. From a young age, she developed a strong passion for writing, which was greatly influenced by her father, who was also a writer. She pursued her education and earned a BA in literature from Brockenhurst College in London in 1953. After completing her degree, she decided to pursue writing as her career. Alongside her writing, she worked as an editor for various magazines. In her personal life, she married Alan Brownjohn on February 6, 1960. They had 3 children, Janet Sayers, Ian Towson, and Stephen Brownjohn. However, after 9 years of marriage, they divorced in March 1969. Celtic Christianity had a significant impact on her work. She was deeply inspired by it. This influence is evident in her major works like Celtic Alternative, published in 1987, and Celtic Year in 1993. These works not only reflect her interest in Celtic Christianity, but also contributed to her growing fame in the literary world. On this slide, I want to highlight how the poet reveals a profound truth. Death can silence us completely, leaving us speechless and unable to express our feelings. It's a reminder of the transient nature of time, how everything around us, even our loved ones, is fleeting. We see this in the poet's longing for her mother, which is filled with a heavy heart and deep emotion. The poem carries a nostalgic and melancholic tone, inviting us to reflect on those bittersweet memories. The emotional impact is powerful because it connects us to personal moments, whether it's the interlocutor's memories of her mother or the mother's recollection of a beach holiday they shared. A photograph often captures these memories, serving as a nostalgic connection that brings the past into the present. Overall, this slide emphasizes the central idea that memories, while beautiful, are also tinged with sadness because they remind us of what time takes away. It's a poignant reflection on love, loss, and the fleeting nature of life itself. This slide features a nostalgic image, a cardboard cutout that captures a simple yet meaningful moment from the past. You see, it shows me when I was a little girl, along with my 2 girl cousins. They're paddling together, each holding one of my mother's hands. My mother, the big girl in the picture, looks to be around 12 years old or so. It's a snapshot of innocence and family togetherness. All 3 of us are standing still, smiling through our hair, caught in a candid moment while a camera was being held by our uncle. This photograph isn't just about the image itself. It symbolizes a time of childhood joy, innocence, and the strong bonds of family. As we look at this image, it reminds us how these small, everyday moments can become treasured memories, shaping our sense of identity and connection. It's a beautiful example of how photographs serve as windows into our past, helping us remember and cherish the simple joys of those times. Now, let's take a closer look at this photo. It's been taken by an unknown author but is licensed under CC BY-NC-ND, so we know it's shared with permission. In the image, we see water splashing around, which really captures the lively movement of paddling. The verb paddling here refers to the action of navigating through water, often with a paddle, and it's a great example of how words can vividly describe physical actions. You might notice the picture frame around the photo. This is simply where the photograph has been mounted, framing the scene for better presentation. And as we think about the words here, paddling is not just about the physical act, but also a metaphor for navigating challenges or new experiences. This ties into our overall theme of exploring expressive language and poetic devices, which help us bring scenes and actions to life in our writing and speaking. So, when you see images like this, remember how descriptive words, combined with visual elements, deepen our understanding and engagement. In this slide, I want to talk about the photograph that the poet describes. She explains that this picture tells her about a beach holiday, a special memory. When she says it, she's referring to the holiday she spent with her mother. This photo isn't just a picture, it's a reminder, a memory that connects not only the poet but also her mother to that joyful moment. Now, looking at the scene, we see 3 girls in the photograph. The 2 younger girls are holding hands with the older girl, who is around 12 years old. That older girl is actually the poet's mother. You can imagine them navigating through the water along the beach, all standing still together. Their smiles are visible, even behind their hair, which is being blown around by the sea breeze. This image captures more than just a moment at the beach. It reflects the warmth, closeness, and happiness of that day, making it a powerful memory for the poet and her mother. It's a beautiful reminder of their bond and the simple joys of a beach holiday. Let's take a closer look at this phrase, "stood still to smile." Here, we see an example of alliteration, which is the repetition of the initial consonant sounds, in this case, the C sound. Alliteration helps create a musical or poetic quality in the language, making the phrase more memorable and engaging. Now, if you look at the next line, it says, "The cardboard shows me how it was." This is an example of personification, where inanimate objects like cardboard are given human qualities. Here, the ability to show or reveal something. Personification brings a sense of life and emotion to the imagery, helping us connect more deeply with the scene being described. Both of these poetic devices, alliteration and personification, are tools that poets and writers use to add layers of meaning and emotional impact. They're especially important in poetry because they help convey mood, tone, and the subtleties of memory or experience. Throughout the presentation, we've been exploring how poetic devices enrich language, making ordinary moments feel more vivid and expressive. This slide is a perfect example of how these devices work together to deepen our understanding and appreciation of poetic imagery. All right, let's take a closer look at this photograph. First, consider who might have been taking the picture. Was it one of the girls, or perhaps someone else nearby? Understanding the photographer's perspective helps us interpret the scene more deeply. Now, let's describe what we see. The scene shows a group of girls standing still, seemingly focused or perhaps waiting for something. Their posture and expressions can tell us a lot about their emotions or the context of the moment. Next, think about why the girls were standing still. Were they posing for a picture, waiting for an event to start, or maybe just pausing during their activity? These questions help us grasp the situation's purpose and significance. Moving on, let's consider the word cardboard. What does it mean in this context? Usually, cardboard refers to a thick paper material, often used for making boxes, signs, or props. Recognizing this helps us understand the scene better. Perhaps they are holding or standing near cardboard objects, which could be part of a project or display. Finally, I want you to reflect on the overall message of this photograph. What does it tell us about the moment captured? How does it connect to broader themes we've discussed, like childhood, community, or creativity? By contemplating these questions, we deepen our understanding and appreciation of the photograph's significance within the bigger picture of our presentation. Let's take a closer look at this example of a transferred epithet. When I say terribly transient feet, the key word here is transient. It doesn't mean that the feet themselves are short-lived, but rather that it's the human being, our life, our presence, that is fleeting. The feet are just a metaphor for that temporary existence. And notice the alliteration with terribly transient feet. The repetition of the T sound emphasizes the fleeting nature of life, making the phrase more memorable and poetic. Now, if we think about the imagery, this photograph, which shows a sweet face, perhaps of a mother, reminds us of something timeless, something that seems to have changed less over time. The sea, for instance, appears to be more constant compared to our fleeting lives, as it washes over the terribly transient feet. This contrast between the enduring sea and the transient human life adds emotional depth. It reminds us that while our lives are brief, there are elements in nature that remain constant, providing a sort of silent witness to our fleeting existence. Connecting this to the overall theme, it highlights how poets use poetic devices like transferred epithets and alliteration to deepen emotional resonance and evoke reflection on the transient nature of human life versus the permanence of nature. Now let's look at some of the nuances in this slide. First, we see the phrase, lack of difficulty, and the word ease, which highlights how sometimes things seem effortless on the surface. But if we dig a little deeper, we find a more complex emotional layer. The wry expression is particularly interesting. It shows that someone finds the situation somewhat amusing because they understand more than others do. It's a subtle, knowing smile that hints at a deeper awareness. Next, we have the word wry, which signifies that kind of subtle humor or irony, often tied to personal insight. Then, moving to labored, this describes effort and struggle, things that required exertion, pain, or endurance. In the context of the photograph, the snapshot from 20 or 30 years later, we see a reflection on the past. The woman laughs and calls it Betty and Dolly, reminiscing about how they dressed for the beach. But here, the key point, she's laughing at the photo, at her past self, with a mixture of fondness and maybe a little irony. The sea holiday was her past, but her present is her laughter, which carries a sense of both joy and nostalgia. Both the past and the present are tinged with that wry tone, a kind of quiet acknowledgement of the passage of time and the losses that come with it. The phrase, wry with the labored ease of loss, beautifully captures that bittersweet feeling, how loss can be both painful and somehow accepted with a gentle, knowing humor. This slide reminds us that even in ease, there can be layers of meaning, memories colored by effort, pain, and ultimately, a kind of graceful acceptance. This slide describes how the poet reflects on a photograph taken about 20 or 30 years ago. She mentions that her mother, when recalling her beach holiday, would often laugh and show her the picture of two girls she called Betty and Dolly. The poet finds her mother's attire amusing because it looks quite old-fashioned now. What's really important here is the theme of loss and nostalgia. The poet suggests that both she and her mother have lost something over time. For her mother, it's her youth and the joyful moments she experienced during that holiday. For the poet, it's the mother's laughter itself, something that has become a cherished memory. Both of them find it painful to remember these beautiful moments, which makes their nostalgia bittersweet. It's a reminder of how time changes us and how memories, even happy ones, can evoke a sense of longing and melancholy. This ties into the overall theme of the presentation, which explores how nostalgia shapes our understanding of the past and influences our present emotions. So this slide explores what I call the labored ease of loss. It highlights how making the pain of loss and separation bearable is actually a really tough process. It's not something that happens overnight or easily. It requires effort, patience, and resilience. But what's remarkable is that, over time, both individuals involved have managed to make this burden more bearable for themselves. Now, I want to draw your attention to the term oxymoron here. It's interesting because it captures that paradox, how something so inherently painful can also lead to a kind of emotional growth or acceptance, almost like an uneasy peace. And then, we see the mention of poetic devices. These are tools that help us express complex, often contradictory feelings in a way that's resonant and meaningful. They help convey that delicate balance between pain and healing, loss and acceptance. Overall, this connects to the broader theme of how humans grapple with loss, how we find ways to endure, adapt, and sometimes even find beauty in the struggle. It's a reminder that the journey through grief is complicated, often filled with contradictions, but ultimately a process of transformation. Let's take a moment to reflect on this intriguing line. Both wry with the labored ease of loss. What do you think this means? Well, it captures a kind of bittersweet humor or irony, wryness, that comes from experiencing something difficult, like loss, but perhaps trying to mask it with a kind of effortless or even humorous attitude. It suggests that even in moments of sorrow, there's a way people might cope through a subtle, almost effortless sense of irony. Now, thinking about why the mother might laugh, what could that tell us? It could be a way of processing her pain, or maybe a reflection of her resilience. Sometimes laughter isn't just about humor, it's a defense mechanism or a way to find some light in dark times. Then, about the photograph, who are these three girls? What role might they play in this story? Are they part of the mother's past? Or perhaps they symbolize innocence, hope, or even memories that remain with her. Recognizing these figures helps us connect more deeply with the themes of loss and memory that run throughout the presentation. Finally, I want to leave you with some questions for reflection. How do we confront grief? And in what ways can humor serve as a bridge through pain? These reflections tie into the overall theme of resilience and the complex ways we navigate difficult emotions. Thank you for being with me through this journey. On this final slide, I want to reflect on the poet's closing thoughts. She returns to the present and shares that her mother has been gone for nearly 12 years. Yet, she finds herself unable to say anything more about this loss. It's as if the silence surrounding her mother's death is so profound that words simply can't capture it. When she describes the photograph and her feelings for her mother, she becomes speechless. This moment really highlights a powerful truth about life. Death is the ultimate reality that silences us all eventually. We also see the use of poetic devices, like alliteration, silent silences, which emphasizes that silence itself can be so overwhelming that it renders everything else mute. The situation here is one of deep circumstance, her mother's passing, a loss that's almost as long as her own life. Yet there's nothing left to say about it. The silence is all-consuming. This emotional closure reminds us of a universal truth. No matter how much we want to speak or understand, death ultimately brings a silence that's impossible to cross. It's a somber, but honest reflection on the nature of life and loss, an important part of the overall theme of our presentation about the enduring power of memory and the inescapable reality of mortality.